Hello! Welcome to our presentation about our senior capstone for Eastern Washington University. Our project is a 2D sci-fi dungeon crawler game. The developers are me, Graham Mix, Brian Wilson, Theodore Pirtle, and Callum McKenzie. The goals for this project are as follows. Create a fun sci-fi themed game that people can enjoy playing. We want our game to be dynamic as well as interesting, and we intend to do that through a balanced combat system, randomly generated levels with interactive and lootable pieces, and a beautiful art style that gives the game its futuristic theme. More details on that in the coming slides. In addition to that, we want the player to be able to create a unique teams consisting of varying classes that we will provide for them. There are 8 different classes so far, and they are the Soldier, Scholar, Delegate, Commancer, Technician, Operative, Wildlander, and Psionics. Each of them will provide a useful set of skills that the player will need to think about and determine if they want a certain class on their team. Each class will have their own base level stats that help determine their effectiveness in combat. Alongside our stats system, each class will be able to equip different sets of armor and weapons. Each class will have their own level up tracks where they will gain new abilities and skills they can use. Also, we want the player to have their team engage in challenging battles as they progress through the campaign. They will battle varying enemies of different difficulty levels. Like the player's party, each enemy encounter will be filled with party members that have their own unique skills, attributes, and equipment. Lastly, we want our player to be able to run through a narrative in our game. It will be including 4 different factions that each have different goals in mind. The player can interact with each as they will be unaligned. When we were first designing this game, there were a lot of ideas that were pitched. The biggest decision we needed to make was which engine our game was going to be created with. There were 2 options, Unity or Godot. Unity is a much more developed and mature engine, whilst Godot was a newer engine with its own special coding language. Ultimately, we decided to go with Unity. Details on that later. Secondly, we needed to decide on the theme our game was going to have. We thought of 2 main options, go with a medieval theme or a sci-fi theme. The medieval theme is a classic, and there's a lot of previous work that we could have based our game from. The sci-fi theme is much more dynamic because it has much more room for creativity and imagination. The sci-fi theme is the route we took. There were other considerations as well. Should the mission be short and self-contained, or should there be longer and more developed missions? We went with something in the middle. Should we combine movement and combat or separate them? We opted to separate them since we determined the game will be much easier to develop if we go with this approach. Do we go with a pixel art style or a flat art style? We went with the flat art style since it allows for more well-defined details and provides a better picture for the player.
Hello, this is Theodore. Our main goal for this quarter was to get a working demo completed. This demo would be a working test level that would test combat, world exploration, enemy behavior, and other primary system features. Our characters, both player and non-player, will consist of attributes, a class, along with equipment and items. The attributes are the base stats of our characters. They include the character's HP, aim, and other stats that allow them to interact with the world around them. Each character will have a class that gives them different abilities. There are currently 7 player classes. Equipment is represented by weapons and armor. Only the weapon will actually have any type of visual aid, at least at the moment. These will be used to determine some of the different combat calculations. They will also have items. Items will be stuff that will be like in a bag that they can use, such as to be able to heal. These will be both in battle and out of battle. Also, there's combat. Combat is turn-based. We plan on having a narrative gameplay where our choices that we make throughout missions impact the end game. And also we want to have slightly dynamic map and dungeon generation, but for the most part it will be we will design a map and that will just be how the map is.
So what have we accomplished this quarter? We've expanded on the narrative for our 4 factions. We've built the UML for our combat systems and for our classes. We've built the logic diagrams that detail player interactions and how they will use combat and somewhat in our exploration. And we've built a main menu, which is displayed upon opening, and we have created enough sprites to get things started.
So, what I have accomplished so far this quarter is I have designed the UML for how the base classes in combat should interact with one another. So that is things such as the combatant, the status effects, the allies, soldier, etc. Those all live under one UML at current. Statuses should live as a list or in the combatant class. The exploration or battle party system, that was an extension that was added into the UML at the request of a couple of my associates. And then all playable classes extend from a singular root class, taking full advantage of the polymorphism that C# allows us to take advantage of. So I have also been working on the design for the 4 factions that players will interact with. And that includes their motivations, the rewards that they can offer to players, other aspects of them, such as the lore behind them, the contacts from the different factions that players will be able to speak with. I have also implemented friendly NPCs that players will be able to speak with in a variety of environments, most likely those that are non-combat oriented, and I also designed the Scholar class. So my plan for this next quarter is I plan to implement more of the classes into code and further flesh out the factions. So right now they currently feel rather flat and not real. Like, they feel like fabrications. So I will be spending more time to make sure that they are as round as necessary. I will also be writing out player and faction interactions, as well as implementing them into code specifically. So those are things such as how a player might respond to a given situation, or how a faction might react to a certain development that the players make.
Here are my contributions to the development so far. Sprite development. Alongside with all of my team, we have developed a fair number of sprites for the game. To the left, you can see our soldier sprite and the sprite for one of our assault rifles. What I worked on in that project was the arms for the soldier and parts of the gun, as well as the color scheme for the gun. Another contribution is the Wildlander class and design. The Wildlander is a class that is meant to gain the enemy's attention whilst being hard to kill. My biggest contribution has to be the game start menu. In the video below, you can see how the main menu looks as well as how much the player can interact with it. The player can load a new game, load a previous save, change their settings, and see who made this game. In the background is a blinking star field that spawns stars all over the place at random places. There are also 2 celestial bodies floating in the background, a red planet and a moon. This is a demonstration of the flat art style and what we can do with it.
My contribution to this class has a bit to do with core system design, some of the current coding, along with enemy design, weapon design, and some of the artwork. Core system design, I did stuff like the soldier, operative, and delegate classes. I also did a bit of designing with stats and exploration skills, and combat too. But we all kind of as a group worked on those last 2 together. Coding, I've worked some of the base classes to do with the different characters. I like combatant, ally, enemy, weapon, just some of those things. We currently don't have too much of that done though, so. As for weapon design, I did a lot of like how the weapons work, like stat-wise. And like functionality of them, like how they are incorporated into combat. Along with I kind of have like laid out some design principles, like different types of weapons, like assault rifle, pistol. They usually do different things based on kind of what type of weapon they are. And I also have worked out to try and make everything roughly equal. There's not going to be like one weapon that's just massively better than all the other ones. Also, enemy design, I've laid out kind of how to do enemy stats, and also I've kind of laid out how how the enemies will spawn in like parties and stuff like that, like and what the party compositions will be. And here's some of the art. While we've all worked some on the character, I've mainly worked on weapons. Some of the other people have also worked on weapons with me. Here's kind of just a base version of the gun, base version without color. The weapons will have different colors kind of based on factions, unit type, but also players will be able to choose what color palette they want their weapon to be. Here are 3 examples on the side of what some of those color palettes might be. Thank you.
The combat system overview is a design document that follows what actions a player can take and the logic behind it. So here are the actions that can be made in a turn and how the system will react to those actions. For our combat UI, we made an initial mock-up. This got down the positioning of where we wanted things and also to be able to visually see what information we wanted to present the player with. I then worked on the updated UI, which is how things will appear in-game, and removed things that would need to be made inside Unity itself, rather than Figma. I then transitioned into making sprites. I worked on the 3 enemy sprites, which are currently all for the Empire faction. First was the Legionnaire, then the Bulwark, and then finally the Bannerman. We currently don't have any sprites for the other factions, since we were focused on trying to go for the demo first, so we just wanted to get at least 3 done. I also worked on some of the consumable items so that we could see what they would look like in our inventory system. Currently it is just 1 item with 4 color variants. I also worked on the map generation document, which has gone through at least 2 iterations. We currently had it where rooms were going to be randomly generated, but we have since transitioned into a more controlled situation. And I also made the backgrounds for some of the maps. This document lists out the layout of how our first map is going to be implemented. It also has all the plans, which we think comprehensively tests all the factors we have with combat and exploration. So for the demo, we planned to do 5 of the rooms, and I have made the backgrounds for those rooms, so I will just showcase them over here. So I just wanted to highlight one of the tools we had learned. I had started learning it at the beginning of the quarter, which is Figma, which is this really useful collaborative tool. It works very similar to Adobe Illustrator, but on top of it being free, all of us can collaborate on the same document at the same time. So it's given a lot of benefit to our team. It's easy to share a link so that we can all double check each other's work and ask for feedback much more easily. It also comes with a large amount of plugins and libraries that we can use. The cons of it are that since it's not as popular as something like Adobe Illustrator, it doesn't have as many tutorials, meaning when we encounter problems, we generally have to try and solve them ourselves rather than being able to look up reference.
So on Godot versus Unity, initially when we started out on this project, Godot was the engine of choice. It offered the flexibility of a smaller independent platform and had a more robust 2D engine than what Unity offered. However, as we started to dive into it, Godot was not only learning a new tool, but learning a new language, as it lacked any sort of built-in support for C# or any kind of object-oriented language, which Unity does support C# natively. That was a big stumbling block for a lot of us going forward. Didn't really mesh with our comprehension of what we wanted this game to be and the time frame we have to accomplish our goals. Additionally, Unity offers a very robust marketplace that we can build on as we need to. And so going forward, that is the engine that we are going to be making use of, is the Unity engine.
Here's what we want to accomplish in the future. First, we want to have a turn-based combat system. Second, we want to create all the sprites for all the entities that we currently want in our game. And lastly, we want to implement a system that can introduce new characters to the player so that they may recruit them. Thank you for watching.